This story is about betrayal from where you least expect it. It is a cautionary tale about friendships, marriage, and everything in between. Well, I don't want to give you too much and ruin the story for you. Once you've finished, please leave a comment. I look forward to hearing from you. Keena Jacobs had learned that marriage was not a fairy tale after the wedding pictures were framed, after the cake had been eaten, after the white dress had been sealed away in a garment bag at the back of the closet. Marriage, real marriage, was the alarm clock going off before sunrise, the bills arriving on the same day as the grocery list, the quiet negotiation over whose turn it was to fold laundry, the kiss on the forehead when one of them was too tired to talk, but too loyal to sleep angry. 5 years after becoming Mrs. Brock Jacobs, Keena no longer measured love by grand gestures. She measured it by whether Brock remembered how she liked her coffee, whether he checked her tires before a long drive, whether he still reached for her hand in the grocery store, even when their cart was full of practical things and not one item that felt romantic. Brock loved her. Keena knew that. But love had become work, and work had become the rhythm of their life. There were nights when they sat on opposite ends of the couch, both scrolling through their phones, saying nothing because the day had already taken all their words. There were mornings when Brock kissed her cheek and left before she was fully awake, chasing overtime, chasing security, chasing the future he believed a husband was supposed to build. Keena respected him for it. She also missed him inside it. Faith Johnson heard that loneliness before Keena ever admitted it out loud. Faith had been Keena's best friend since the 8th grade, back when Keena wore braids with beads at the ends, and Faith used to pass her folded notes during social studies. For 20 years, Faith had been there, cheering at graduations, clapping at promotions, throwing birthday dinners, adjusting Keena's veil before she walked down the aisle. Faith knew the language of Keena's sighs. She knew when Keena was frustrated before Keena put words to it. She knew Brock's schedule, Keena's favorite perfume, the way Keena laughed when she was trying not to cry. What Keena did not know was that Faith had also learned how to hide envy so well it looked like devotion. Faith had watched Keena excel at everything and had smiled so convincingly that no one questioned the ache behind it. Keena had the degree. Keena had the house. Keena had Brock. Brock, with his steady voice and broad shoulders. Brock, who fixed things without being asked. Brock, who looked at Keena like she was a promise he intended to keep. Faith had stood beside Keena in a satin bridesmaid dress, bouquet in hand, while Keena became Mrs. Jacobs. She had smiled for the photographer. She had dabbed tears from the corners of her eyes. Everyone thought she was emotional because her best friend had found love. Only Faith knew she was mourning what she believed should have belonged to her. "You need this trip," Faith said one Thursday evening, sitting at Keena's kitchen island like she owned a corner of the home. 6 days, 5 nights, 8 Rios, all inclusive. No cooking, no cleaning, no work, no wife duties, just sun, food, water, music, and us. Keena looked down at the brochure Faith had slid across the island. The beach on the cover looked unreal. All blue water and white sand, the kind of place where nobody argued about bills or laundry or whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher. "You already picked the resort?" she asked. "Picked it, priced it, stalked every review, watched every room tour on YouTube," Faith said. "Girl, I basically already live there in my mind." "Faith." Keena gave her a look. "You know I can't just disappear for almost a week." "Disappear?" Faith pressed a hand to her chest. "You make it sound like we're asking you to join witness protection. It's Jamaica, Keena, a resort with wristbands and breakfast buffets. You'll survive." Keena laughed, despite herself. "I'm serious." "So am I." Faith softened her voice and reached across the island, covering Keena's hand with hers. "You've been tired. Don't pretend you haven't. Every time I call, you sound like you're holding your breath." Keena pulled her hand back slowly and busied herself with the rim of her mug. That doesn't mean I need to run to an island. It means you need to remember you're a person before you're everybody's dependable somebody. Faith tilted her head. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Kina opened her mouth, then closed it. She thought about her calendar, about grocery pickups and work deadlines and Brock's dry cleaning and the dinner reservations she kept postponing because they were both too exhausted to enjoy them. I don't know, she admitted. Faith's smile returned, small and victorious. Exactly. Kina smiled, but it was cautious. Brock isn't crazy about it. Faith rolled her eyes. Brock isn't crazy about anything that involves you having fun with single women. That's not fair. It's accurate. Faith leaned forward. Kina, you've been married 5 years, not buried alive. Brandy is going, Melly is going, Lovely is going. We already put down deposits. You can't be the only one sitting at home because your husband has trust issues. He doesn't have trust issues, Kina said, though the defense came too quickly. He just thinks y'all get reckless. Faith snorted. Brock thinks smiling at a bartender is reckless. That is not true. It is absolutely true. He gives everybody that look. Faith narrowed her eyes, lowered her voice, and mimicked Brock's serious tone. Who is that? Why is he talking to you? Why are you laughing? Kina tried not to laugh, but a smile broke through. Stop. Brock does not sound like that. He sounds exactly like that when he's mad. Faith leaned back, pleased she had loosened her. Look, I'm not saying he's a bad husband. I know he loves you. But sometimes men love you in a way that slowly turns into a cage and then act shocked when you ask for a window. Kina's smile faded. It's not a cage. Faith watched her carefully. Then prove it. Go because you want to go. Come home because you want to come home. That's all. Kina hated that phrase. Trust issues. It sounded small, insecure, ugly. Brock was not ugly in the ways he loved her. He was protective, sometimes stubborn, often blunt. He did not dislike Faith, Brandy Dunn, Melly James, or Lovely Mercado because they were women. He disliked the way they spoke about relationships like rules were suggestions. He tolerated them because Kina loved them, but he had never pretended to understand the way they celebrated being unattached. Kina looked toward the hallway, where the framed wedding photo hung near the stairs. In the picture, Brock's hand rested at the small of her back, and Faith stood 2 people away, smiling with red lipstick and bright eyes. Kina remembered that day as perfect. She did not notice that Faith had never been looking at the camera in half the photos. She had been looking at Brock. I'll talk to him, Kina said at last. Faith's face lit up. That's my girl. I said I'll talk to him. I didn't say yes. Talking is the first step to yes. Faith slid off the stool and grabbed her purse. And when you say yes, send me a picture of your passport so I can make sure you don't play games. Faith. Kina. Faith blew her a kiss on the way to the door. Stop overthinking joy. That night, when Kina brought it up again, Brock stood by the bedroom dresser, removing his watch slowly. I don't like it, he said. Kina sat on the edge of the bed, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. I'm not asking because I need permission, she said carefully. Brock's eyes lifted to hers in the dresser mirror. Then what are you asking for? Your support. He gave a short laugh without humor. Those are 2 different words for the same thing when you already made up your mind. I haven't made up my mind. Kina, Faith doesn't invite people. She recruits them. If you're bringing it to me tonight, that means she already sold you on it. Kina flinched at how close that landed. She's my friend. I know she is. Brock placed his watch on the dresser with more care than necessary. That's why I don't say half of what I think. Say it now. Brock turned around. Fine. Faith doesn't respect marriage because she's never had to protect one. Brandy thinks every argument means leave. Melly thinks secrets are personality traits. Lovely lives like consequences are for other people. And you want me to smile while my wife flies out of the country with all of them chanting about freedom? Keena stood. That is unfair to them and insulting to me. It's not insulting to know your environment matters. My environment? Keena's eyebrows rose. I'm not a teenager, Brock. Then stop acting like me being concerned is me being controlling. The room went quiet. Downstairs, the refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly along the street. Keena folded her arms over herself, not because she was cold, but because she needed something to hold. I know. Then why are we still discussing it? Because I want to go. The truth came out softer than she intended, but there it was, sitting between them. I need a break, Brock. I love you, but I need to breathe. A break from me? Brock asked. Keena's face softened. No. From feeling like every day is something to manage. From waking up with lists in my head. From being tired before the day starts. You could have told me that. I tried. When? Last month. When I said we should take a weekend somewhere and you said we needed to wait because the roof inspection was coming up. 2 weeks ago when I asked if we could go dancing and you said you had to be up early. Yesterday, when I said I missed us and you kissed my forehead like I was a child asking for candy. Brock's expression changed. That's what you thought? That's what it felt like. He rubbed both hands over his face. I'm trying to build something for us. I know. Keena's voice broke around the words. But sometimes it feels like you're building a life for us so hard that you forget to live in it with me. Brock looked at her for a long time. Keena watched the conflict move through his face. Fear, pride, love, resignation. He did not want to be the husband who said no. He did not want to hand Faith proof that he was controlling, so he swallowed what he wanted to say and nodded once. Go then. I don't want you going because Faith talked you into believing I'm the problem, Brock said. She didn't. Did she tell you you deserve to breathe? Keena looked away. Brock nodded once, hurt confirming itself. That sounds like Faith. Maybe she said it because it's true. Keena stepped toward him. Don't say it like that. Like what? Like you're giving me permission and punishment at the same time. Brock sighed. I'm trying, Keena. That's all I can promise. Keena wanted to ask him to hold her. Brock wanted to ask her not to go again. Neither of them said the thing that might have saved them from the silence gathering at the edges of the room. Ocho Rios greeted them with heat that wrapped around their shoulders like silk. The resort rose beyond the palms in clean white lines and glass balconies, with turquoise water glittering beyond the pool deck. There were swim-up bars, restaurants with open-air seating, rum punch served before check-in was complete, and staff who seemed to move with effortless grace. For the first few hours, Keena allowed herself to be only a woman on vacation, not a wife worrying about whether her husband was upset, not an employee checking emails, not the reliable friend, the responsible daughter, the woman everyone trusted to make the right choice. Just Keena, barefoot on warm tile, laughing as Brandy complained that the ocean was prettier than any man she had dated. The moment they stepped into the open-air lobby, the women slowed as if the resort had put a spell on them. Ceiling fans turned lazily above polished floors. Bougainvillea spilled over stone planters in hot pink waves. Somewhere beyond the check-in desk, steel drums played a bright melody that made Brandy drop her carry-on handle and sway her hips before anyone had handed them a room key. Now this, Brandy announced, lifting both arms, is what healing looks like. Melly pushed her sunglasses onto the top of her head. Healing has a swim-up bar? Mine does, Brandy said, and it better come with unlimited shrimp. Lovely turned in a slow circle, filming herself with the lobby behind her. Ladies, if my skin doesn't glow like money by the time we leave, I'm filing a complaint. Faith laughed and lifted her own phone, angling it toward Keena. "And here is Mrs. Jacobs, finally outside without a grocery list." Keena covered half her face with her hand. "Faith, stop recording me before I even get lip gloss on." "Nope. This is the documentary version. Raw, honest. Vacation Keena being born." Keena tried to roll her eyes, but the welcome drink in her hand was cold and sweet. The air smelled like salt and flowers, and for the first time in months, nobody needed anything from her. She felt the tightness in her shoulders loosen 1 inch at a time. Brandy Dunn was loud in the way fireworks were loud, bright, quick, impossible to ignore. Melly James was sharper, a woman who could spot a lie from across a room and still flirt with it if it looked good enough. Lovely Mercado lived up to her name in presentation, always glossy, always fragrant, always dressed as if someone might photograph her for a magazine spread. Faith filmed them all on her iPhone, narrating every toast, every plate, every walk through the lobby. Their rooms were on the 4th floor, 2 adjoining suites with balconies that faced the water. Keena stepped outside and gripped the railing. The ocean stretched blue and impossible beneath the afternoon sun, broken only by the white line of waves folding over the reef. For a moment, she forgot to feel guilty for being there. "This view is disrespectful," Melly said from the doorway. "How am I supposed to return to regular life after this?" "You don't," Lovely said, already unpacking swimsuits by color. "You come home, act mysterious, and make people wonder what changed." Brandy flopped backward onto one of the beds. "What changed is I'm no longer accepting dates at chain restaurants." Keena laughed, pulling her phone from her bag when it vibrated. Brock's name appeared on the screen. "You landed?" She smiled softly and typed back, "Yes." "At the resort now?" "It's beautiful." His reply came quickly. "Be careful. Call me later." The words were loving and heavy at the same time. Keena stared at them until Faith appeared over her shoulder. "Checking in already?" Faith asked. "He just wanted to know I made it." Faith reached for a sun hat from Keena's suitcase and placed it on her head. "Tell your husband you are safe, gorgeous, and unavailable until dinner." Keena removed the hat, but she was smiling. "You're a mess." "I'm a blessing," Faith said, and lifted her phone again just as Keena laughed. "Memories," Faith said whenever Keena asked why she was recording so much. "You know we never take enough pictures." But Faith was not collecting memories. She was collecting leverage. Every drink in Keena's hand, every laugh that lasted too long. Every moment Brock would not understand if he saw it without context. Faith had come to Jamaica with bikinis, sunglasses, sandals, and a plan she had been too patient to rush. That first evening, the resort hosted a beachside welcome party. Lanterns hung between palm trees, and long tables were dressed with fruit, jerked chicken, rice and peas, fried plantains, and trays of desserts that made Brandy declare she was starting with cake, because adulthood meant freedom. A live band played near the sand, and guests drifted between the buffet and the dance floor. Lovely found the best lighting immediately and posed under a lantern while Melly directed her like a professional photographer. "Chin down," Melly said. "No, not funeral down, expensive down." Lovely adjusted instantly. "Like this?" "That's the one. That says, 'I own property near water.'" Keena laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Faith's camera was already pointed at her. "Why do you keep catching me mid-laugh?" Keena asked. "Because you look alive," Faith said, "and because Brock needs proof that we didn't kidnap you and make you miserable." Keena's laughter thinned, but Brandy saved the moment by grabbing her hand. "Come dance before somebody's uncle gets brave and asks me to whine." They danced barefoot in the sand until Keena's calves burned. She forgot the phone in Faith's hand. She forgot Brock's careful warning. She forgot, for minutes at a time, that the woman filming her had learned to aim a camera the way some people aimed weapons. Later that night, after the music softened and the beach emptied into scattered footprints, Keena stood alone at the edge of the water with her sandals dangling from 2 fingers. The hem of her dress moved around her knees in the warm breeze. Behind her, the resort still glowed with laughter and lantern light, but out there, where the waves curled around her ankles and pulled back into the dark, everything became quieter. She could finally hear herself. She thought about Brock's face the night he told her to go. Not angry exactly, not even cold, but guarded in a way that made her feel as if a door had closed between them. Keena had told herself she deserved this trip. She had repeated Faith's words until they sounded like her own. You need to breathe. You need to remember yourself. But standing there with rum still warm in her chest and sand clinging to her feet, she wondered why breathing felt so much like hiding. It bothered her that she had laughed so freely when Brock was probably home pretending not to check the time. It bothered her that part of her resented him for loving her carefully instead of wildly. Brock's love paid bills, fixed leaks, watched weather reports before she traveled, and texted reminders to call when she landed. It was not careless. It was not flashy. It did not always make her feel beautiful, but it had made her feel safe. Somewhere along the way, safe had started to feel like ordinary, and ordinary had started to feel like absence. Keena pressed her hand against the place where her wedding ring rested. The diamond caught a sliver of moonlight, small and steady. She remembered Brock sliding it onto her finger, his hands trembling just enough for her to notice. She remembered promising forever without understanding that forever had dull days inside it, days that asked for patience instead of passion, forgiveness instead of fireworks. She loved him. That truth did not vanish because she was tired. It did not vanish because Faith knew how to name her loneliness in a way that made it sound like liberation. For a moment, Keena considered calling him. She imagined his voice answering, low and sleepy, imagined herself saying, "I miss you. I'm sorry we left things strange." But then she imagined the questions that might follow, the concern in his tone, the reminder that he had never wanted her there in the first place. She was afraid he would hear the guilt before she could explain it. She was even more afraid he would hear how much she was enjoying herself. So she did not call. She stood with the ocean moving around her ankles and made a small bargain with herself. She would have fun, but not too much. She would relax but not forget who she was. She would let Faith and the others pull her into the brightness of the trip, but she would keep one hand on the life waiting for her at home. It sounded reasonable enough in her mind. It sounded like control. From the balcony above, Faith watched Keena by the water for a few seconds before lifting her phone. She did not record this time. Not yet. Some moments were better left untouched until they could be used to explain the ones that came after. The next morning was all sunlight and indulgence. They claimed 5 lounge chairs near the main pool before breakfast, draping towels and cover-ups over them like flags. Brandy returned from the buffet with a plate stacked so high Melly stared at it in disbelief. "Are you feeding a family?" Melly asked. "I paid for all-inclusive," Brandy said, settling into her chair. "I intend to include all of it." Lovely adjusted her sunglasses. "I'm doing fruit and water until dinner." Brandy pointed a fork at her. "That is between you and your stomach. Don't bring that sadness over here." Keena laughed and leaned back, letting the sun warm her knees. Her phone buzzed beside her drink. Brock again. She answered this time. "Hey, you good?" Brock asked. "I'm good. We're by the pool." "Everybody acting right?" Keena glanced at Brandy, who was negotiating with a server for extra bacon, and Melly, who was critiquing a stranger's sandals under her breath. "Define right." Brock exhaled, almost amused, despite himself. "Keena." "We're fine," she said, softer. "I promise." Faith watched Keena's expression change while she talked to him. The tenderness, the guilt, the invisible thread still tied around her wrist. Faith lifted her phone and captured Keena smiling into the call, then lowered it before Keena noticed. "I'll call you tonight," Keena told Brock. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." When Keena hung up, Faith smiled. "That was sweet. Don't start." "I didn't say anything." "Your face did." Faith held up both hands. "My face is innocent." Melly snorted. "Faith, your face has committed felonies." The women burst into laughter, and Faith laughed with them. But behind her sunglasses, her eyes stayed on Keena. On the second afternoon, under a sky so blue it looked painted, Faith met Dexter at the swim-up pool bar. He had an easy smile, smooth brown skin, and the kind of height that made women glance up twice. He spoke with a calm confidence that did not feel forced. He did not chase attention. Attention moved toward him. Faith watched him laugh with the bartender, watched the way his shoulders filled out his white tank top, and knew instantly he would be useful. "Keena," Faith called, waving her over. "Come meet Dexter." Keena approached with caution, but Dexter's smile softened when he saw her. "Nice to meet you," he said. "You too," Keena replied, and hated that she noticed the depth of his voice. Faith ordered a round of drinks before anyone asked for one. "To Jamaica," she said, lifting her glass, "and to leaving stress where it belongs." "What happens in Jamaica?" Brandy began. "Stays in Jamaica," the others shouted, laughing. Keena laughed too, though something inside her remained still. She heard Brock's voice in her mind, low and uneasy. She saw his face the night he conceded. She took another sip anyway. By the time the toast ended, Keena felt warm from the sun, the rum, and the attention of being surrounded by women who made every ordinary moment feel like a scene. She told herself there was nothing wrong with enjoying it. There was nothing wrong with laughing, nothing wrong with letting the music move through her shoulders, nothing wrong with being seen. Faith knew Keena's weak places because she had been trusted with them. She knew Keena sometimes felt invisible beside Brock's ambition. She knew Keena wished Brock complimented her the way he used to, with surprise in his eyes instead of habit in his mouth. She knew Keena loved to feel chosen, not assumed. Dexter, whether he understood his role or not, stepped perfectly into the space Faith opened for him. The first time Dexter made Keena laugh without the group around them, it was over something small. She was standing near the towel hut, trying to balance 2 towels, a bottle of water, and a paperback she had not opened once since arriving. One towel slid from her arm, and Dexter caught it before it hit the ground. "You look like you're attempting a vacation and losing," he said. Keena took the towel from him, smiling before she could stop herself. "I'm better at schedules than leisure." "That sounds serious." Dexter leaned against the wooden counter with an ease that made everything around him seem less urgent. "Do you need instructions?" "For vacation?" "Absolutely. Step 1. Stop apologizing to the air because you're taking up space. Step 2. Sit down before the sun decides to discipline you. Step 3. Actually open the book you keep carrying around like a prop." Keena looked down at the paperback and laughed. "It is not a prop." "What page are you on?" She flipped it open and frowned. "Page 3. Dexter nodded solemnly. "A tragic case." Keena shook her head, still laughing. "You don't even know me." "I know enough to see you came here trying to relax like it's an assignment." That landed too close to truth, but he said it lightly, without accusation. Keena felt herself soften because he did not seem to want anything from her except a reaction. Across the pool deck, Faith lifted her phone and pretended to film Lovely posing by the cabana, though Keena and Dexter remained perfectly in frame. By day 3, Dexter had become part of the scenery. He appeared at breakfast with a nod. He saved chairs near the pool. He danced when the evening band played and made Keena laugh by pretending to be worse at it than he was. He never touched her in a way that allowed her to accuse him of crossing a line. He simply stood close enough for the possibility to breathe. At breakfast the next morning, Dexter stopped by their table with a plate of fruit and a cup of coffee. "Good morning, vacation student," he said to Keena. Brandy nearly choked on her pineapple. "Vacation student?" Keena pointed her fork at Dexter. "Do not start." "I'm only checking progress." Dexter looked at the empty chair beside Keena, but did not sit until Faith pulled it out with a bright smile. "Sit," Faith said. "Maybe you can teach her how to stop acting like somebody's supervisor." Keena cut her eyes at Faith. "I am sitting right here." "Exactly," Faith said. "And you're sitting like you have a meeting after this." Dexter laughed, but his eyes stayed kind. "Nothing wrong with being responsible." "Thank you," Keena said. "But," Dexter added, "responsible people deserve rest too." Faith lifted her mimosa. "Amen. Somebody put that on a t-shirt for Mrs. Jacobs." The title landed awkwardly. "Mrs. Jacobs!" Keena felt her ring under the table and twisted it once. Dexter noticed the movement but said nothing. That silence made him seem respectful, and because it seemed respectful, Keena let herself keep talking. Later, near the pool, Dexter asked her what she did back home. Keena told him about her job, about being the one people trusted with deadlines and details. He listened without checking his phone, without interrupting, without turning the conversation back to himself. "That sounds like a lot of pressure," he said. Keena shrugged. "I'm used to it." "Being used to weight doesn't mean it isn't heavy." Keena looked at him then, really looked, and hated how seen she felt. Brock loved her by solving problems. Dexter, a stranger, seemed to make problems sound like feelings. It was dangerous, that difference. It made the ordinary ache inside her feel poetic. That afternoon, Faith found small ways to place them together. When the group walked to the pool grill, Faith suddenly needed to take a call and waved Keena ahead with Dexter. When seats were scarce near the cabana, Faith claimed the only open chair was beside him. When Brandy teased Keena about blushing, Faith laughed the loudest and said, "Let her be admired for once." "Admired?" Keena repeated, warning in her voice. Faith widened her eyes. "What? You're beautiful. Everybody knows it. Why should that be a crime because you're married?" Dexter lifted both hands. "I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble." "See?" Faith said. "A gentleman." Keena should have walked away then. Instead, she stayed because leaving would have made the moment bigger than it was. That was what she told herself. She stayed to keep things casual. She stayed because everyone was laughing. She stayed because Dexter did not push. She stayed because part of her wanted to know what he would say next. Faith filmed from behind sunglasses. She filmed Keena laughing at Dexter's jokes. She filmed Dexter handing Keena a drink. She filmed Keena sitting beside him at the night show, her knee angled toward his. When Keena noticed the phone, Faith waved it off. "Girl, you look happy. Let me capture it." At the evening show, Dexter found them near the outdoor stage. The performance was loud and colorful, full of drums and dancers in bright costumes, but Keena became aware of him before he spoke. He sat one row behind her at first. Then Brandy left to get another drink. Melly followed to complain about the line, and Faith shifted seats so smoothly that Dexter ended up beside Keena, as if the arrangement had happened on its own. "Your friends move like a chessboard," Dexter said quietly. Keena glanced at Faith, who was filming the stage, but had the camera angled low enough to catch them, too. "You noticed that?" "I noticed things." "That sounds like a warning." "Maybe it's a confession." Keena should have looked back at the stage. Instead, she watched the side of his face, the easy confidence in his posture, the way he made every sentence feel like it had another meaning tucked underneath. "And what have you noticed?" she asked. Dexter turned toward her. That you laugh with everybody, but you relax when nobody asks you to perform." The words moved through Kina like a hand against a bruise. She smiled because she did not know what else to do. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "Maybe not," he said, "but I know what tired looks like when it's dressed up for vacation." She looked away then, not because he was wrong, but because he had no right to be right. On the other side of Dexter, Faith lowered her phone just enough to hide her smile. The line blurred slowly before it broke. It blurred in the way Dexter remembered how Kina liked her drinks after she mentioned it once. It blurred when he brought her a towel without making a show of it. It blurred when he told her she did not have to explain why she looked sad for 2 seconds during lunch. Each moment was small enough to dismiss and specific enough to matter. On the third night, after the group moved from the show to the bar, Faith placed a drink in Kina's hand and leaned close to her ear. "You have no idea how good it is to see you like this," she said. Kina glanced toward Dexter, who was speaking with Melly near the railing. "Like what?" "Free." Faith smiled gently. "Not somebody's wife, not somebody's planner, just you." Kina looked down at her wedding ring. The room seemed to sway with music, heat, and rum. "I am somebody's wife." "I know," Faith said, "but being married doesn't mean you stop being wanted." The sentence settled exactly where Faith intended. Kina hated that it warmed her. She hated that it sounded like kindness. Most of all, she hated that she wanted Dexter to look over at that exact moment. When he did, and their eyes met across the bar, Kina felt the small bargain she had made with herself on the beach begin to bend. Later, when Dexter asked if she wanted air, Kina said yes before she had time to measure the answer. Outside, the walkway was lined with palms and low garden lights. The music faded behind them but did not disappear. It followed like a pulse. "You okay?" Dexter asked. Kina folded her arms, not cold, just exposed. "I don't know." "That's honest." "Honest would be me going back inside." Dexter did not move closer. "Then go back inside." His restraint made the choice feel like hers, which made it more dangerous. Kina looked at the lobby doors, bright and crowded and safe, then looked at Dexter standing in the warm night with patience instead of pressure. "I should call my husband," she said. "Then call him." Kina reached for her phone, but Faith had it. Earlier, Faith had offered to hold it so Kina could dance without worrying about dropping it. At the time, it had seemed thoughtful. Now, the empty space where her phone should have been felt like one more door quietly closing. Dexter watched her expression shift. "You want me to walk you back?" Kina should have said yes. Instead, she heard Faith's voice again. "Being married doesn't mean you stop being wanted." She heard Brock's voice, too, but it was farther away now, buried under music and ocean wind and the ache of wanting to feel like the woman she had been before life became lists. "Just for a minute," Kina said. They walked without touching at first. That was what Kina noticed most, the space between them. It should have reassured her. It should have made the decision feel harmless, like a conversation stolen from the noise and nothing more. But the space only made her more aware of the choice inside it. Dexter was not pulling her. Faith was not standing there with a drink and a smile, nudging her forward. Brock was not there to be blamed for making her feel unseen. For the first time all night, no one was pushing. Kina was moving on her own. At the corner where the walkway split, one path led back toward the bright lobby doors and the voices of her friends. The other curved toward the quieter side of the resort, where the guest rooms rose in shadowed balconies and soft yellow light. Kina stopped there. Dexter stopped too, a few steps ahead, and looked back without speaking. She could still turn around. That truth came to her clearly, almost gently. She could walk back into the bar, find Faith, take her phone, call Brock and let his voice pull her home from across the water. She could laugh too loudly and pretend she had only needed air. She could save the promise on her finger before it became a memory she would have to explain to herself for the rest of her life. Her thumb brushed her wedding ring. The metal was warm from her skin. She thought of Brock's hands, the careful way he had held hers at the altar, the seriousness in his eyes when he said forever. Then she thought of the silence that had grown between them lately, the unfinished conversations, the kisses that felt like punctuation instead of hunger, the way Dexter had looked at her as if she had entered a room and changed its temperature. Keena waited for guilt to stop her. It came, but it did not stop her. It rose in her chest, heavy and pleading, and still her feet remained angled toward the darker path. That was the moment she understood. The line was not behind Dexter's door. It was here, under the palms, before anything happened that could not be softened with excuses. The line was the second she knew the right direction and chose the other one anyway. Dexter's voice was low. "We can go back." Keena looked at him and the answer formed before she spoke it, not because she was confused, not because she was too drunk to know herself, because for one reckless, aching moment, she wanted to be chosen more than she wanted to be safe. "I know," she said. That night, after too many drinks and too many reminders that she deserved to feel alive, Keena followed Dexter away from the noise. The hallway to his room was quiet, cooled by air conditioning and filled with the faint scent of bleach and flowers. Every step gave her a chance to turn back. Every step became easier because she did not. In the morning, sunlight cut across unfamiliar sheets. Keena opened her eyes and knew before she moved that she had crossed a line she could not uncross. Dexter slept beside her, one arm thrown over his head, peaceful in a way that made her stomach twist. She sat up slowly, gathering pieces of the night with shaking hands. Her wedding ring caught the light. "Oh my God," she whispered. Faith was waiting when Keena returned to the room, sitting on the edge of the bed as if she had not slept. "Don't panic," Faith said immediately. Keena's eyes filled. "I ruined my life." Faith stood and pulled her into a hug that looked like comfort and felt like control. "No, you didn't. Listen to me. Nobody has to know. What happens in Jamaica stays in Jamaica. We all agreed." "Brock can never find out." "He won't," Faith said, rubbing Keena's back while her phone sat charging on the nightstand, full of evidence. "I promise." For the rest of the trip, Keena avoided Dexter. She stayed close to the women, called Brock several times a day, and told him she loved him with such urgency that he asked twice if something was wrong. "No," she said, staring at the ocean from the balcony. "I just miss you." Home received Keena gently, which somehow made it worse. Brock picked her up from the airport with flowers on the passenger seat and relief in his eyes. He kissed her like a man who had been counting days. Keena held him too tightly, burying her face against his neck, breathing in laundry soap and cologne and the life she had almost thrown away for one night of feeling wanted. For a month, everything seemed normal because Keena worked hard to make it so. She cooked more. She listened better. She touched Brock's arm when he talked. She laughed at jokes she might have missed before. Brock noticed the softness in her and mistook it for renewal. He thought the trip had given his wife back to him. Faith visited often, too often, if Keena had not been too tangled in guilt to notice. She lingered when Brock entered the room. She complimented his discipline, his arms, his patience. She laughed too hard at things he said. Brock kept his distance politely, never rude, never warm enough to invite more. Faith interpreted restraint as a challenge. Then Keena missed her cycle. She took the pregnancy test at 6 in the morning, sitting on the bathroom floor while Brock slept on the other side of the wall. When the result appeared, Keena covered her mouth to keep from making a sound. Pregnant. One word, 2 lines. A whole life suddenly suspended between truth and timing. She called Faith first. That was the mistake that sealed everything. "I don't know if it's Brock's," Keena whispered over the phone. "Faith, I can't breathe." Faith's voice became tender. "Okay, we'll figure it out." "I'm thinking about ending it." Faith closed her eyes on the other end of the line, not in sympathy but in satisfaction. "Then I'll help you. Text me everything. Don't keep it in your head." So Keena texted. She confessed fear in fragments, panic in paragraphs, shame in midnight messages. Faith saved every word, screenshots, backups, dates, times. Keena thought she was building a lifeline. Faith was building a case. Faith's opportunity came disguised as self-improvement. She told Brock she wanted to get serious about the gym, but needed someone she trusted to go with her. "Men are weird," she said with a helpless laugh. "They approach you for no reason. If you're there, they'll leave me alone." Brock did not like the request, but he also did not see the trap. Faith was Keena's best friend. Saying no felt unkind. Saying yes felt awkward. He chose awkward. At the gym, Faith touched him whenever she could pretend it was accidental. Her fingers brushed his forearm when he explained a machine. She asked him to stretch her hamstrings and let out soft little sounds with each movement. She asked him to spot her on weights she did not need help lifting. Brock's jaw tightened. He kept his voice neutral, his hands careful, his eyes anywhere but where she wanted them. When it was over, he drove her home first. The ride was stiff with all the words he refused to say. Faith thanked him sweetly, stepped out of the car, and left her phone on the passenger side floor, unlocked by design. Brock was halfway home before he noticed it. The screen lit up when it shifted against the mat. Faith's name floated above a background image from Jamaica, Keena in a sundress, laughing beside the pool. "Return it," he told himself. "Don't look. Be better than suspicion." Then a message preview appeared from Keena. "I can't stop thinking about what I did. What if this baby isn't Brock's?" The world narrowed to the glow of that screen. Brock pulled into a parking lot and sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, breathing like someone had struck him. He did not want to open the phone. He did not want the truth. But the truth had already touched him, and curiosity was no longer curiosity. It was dread demanding confirmation. He saw the videos first. Keena at the bar with Dexter, Keena laughing. Keena walking down a resort hallway behind him. He saw messages about the pregnancy, about fear, about ending it before he knew it existed. He saw his marriage from the angle of a woman who had watched it collapse and kept recording. By the time Brock reached home, something inside him had gone quiet. Keena was in the kitchen, stirring a pot she had not needed to make. She smiled when he walked in, then stopped smiling when she saw his face. "Brock?" He placed Faith's phone on the counter between them. Keena looked at it, and all the color left her face. "Tell me it isn't true," he said. Keena opened her mouth, but truth had no gentle shape. She cried. She apologized. She reached for him. Brock stepped back as if her hand were fire. "I begged you not to go," he said, voice breaking at last. "Not because I owned you, because I knew something out there didn't care about us." 2 weeks later, Brock filed for divorce. Faith performed grief beautifully. She cried with Keena. She apologized for leaving the phone. She called herself careless, stupid, devastated. Keena, hollowed out by loss, believed her because betrayal from Brock felt easier to process than betrayal from Faith. Brock had left. Faith stayed. But as the months passed and Keena's life became smaller, Faith's became brighter. She checked on Brock under the excuse of concern. She brought food he did not ask for. She listened when he spoke about anger, disappointment, humiliation. She never defended Keena too much. She never blamed her too harshly. She positioned herself in the middle, soft and available, a witness to his pain. Brock was not looking for love when Faith began building a relationship with him. That was what made her patient again. She had waited 20 years in Keena's shadow. She could wait a few more months in Brock's grief. Eventually, he laughed at something she said. Eventually, he answered when she called. Eventually, loneliness mistook familiarity for comfort. One evening, sitting across from him at a quiet restaurant, Faith let her hand rest near his. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago," she said. Brock looked up. "What?" Faith's smile trembled in a way she hoped looked vulnerable. "I've always been in love with you." The sentence should have flattered him. Instead, it chilled him. Brock sat back slowly as pieces shifted in his mind. Faith pushing the trip, Faith filming everything, Faith introducing Dexter, Faith offering to keep him occupied at the gym, Faith's unlocked phone, left exactly where he would find it, Faith's comfort arriving before his anger had cooled. For the first time, Brock did not see Faith as the friend who had accidentally revealed the truth. He saw the architect. "How long?" he asked quietly. Faith blinked. "How long what?" "How long have you been waiting for my marriage to fall apart?" The mask did not fall all at once. It cracked. Faith's eyes hardened before her mouth remembered to soften. Brock saw it, and the sight made him sick. "You don't understand," Faith whispered. "I understand enough." Brock stood, leaving his napkin folded beside a plate he had barely touched. "Keena destroyed our vows, but you hunted them." Outside, the night air felt heavier than it should have. Brock walked to his car with the terrible knowledge that his marriage had not simply broken under temptation, alcohol, and secrecy. It had been studied. It had been weakened. It had been led toward the cliff by someone smiling from behind a camera. The destruction of his marriage had not been by chance. It had been by design. Make sure you subscribe for more stories.